What's going on, growers? It's James Prigioni coming to you live from Jersey. I have been growing my own plants from seed for over 10 years now, and throughout that time I've been continually refining my process to make it more simple, more effective, and also more convenient. So today I want to share with you the technique for starting seeds that can change your life. It did for me. Let's go! Let's just jump right into the seed starting process, and I'm going to highlight some important aspects as we progress along. So first off, I'm going to show you the growing medium and the whole procedure, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the timing after we get everything kind of planted. So right here is a potting mix I'm going to start with. In the past, I've used a Happy Frog potting mix, but that can be a little expensive and it's not as readily accessible. So for this, we're just going to get a good organic potting mix that anyone can really get, and I just got this at the big box store. Let's get this cut open. And here's the potting mix here. Pretty decent stuff, but one thing that I found with this and some other mixes too is that they'll have a good amount of large sticks in it. So I don't want these large sticks getting in the way of when I'm seeding, because it can restrict seeds from coming up, and it also just makes it a lot harder to put the soil into the trays when you're getting it started. So what I like to do is use this little tool that I created. I made a video about it before. This is just 1/4 inch hardware cloth, and then I've just got it screwed to the bottom to this little frame. So what I can do is I take this soil here and just sift it. Now this may be an added step, but you can see, look at all the sticks and everything that I'm pulling out of here. So this is stuff that's gonna, obstruct some of my seed starting, and I'm not gonna be wasting this. What I'm gonna do is just take this, and I'm just gonna dump it into a bucket, and then use this to mulch around some of my perennials and stuff. So this isn't gonna be wasted. This is gonna be used as wood chips. If you don't want to deal with any of this, you could go with a seed starting mix, but sometimes it's hard to find an organic seed starting mix, and sometimes they're a little more expensive. So let me bring you into what this looks like now after we've refined it. And this is what we're going to be starting our seeds with. I sifted all the soil, refined it, got a beautiful potting mix right here. And at this point, the structure of the growing medium is more important than the nutrition, because when the seeds are young, they contain within them enough nutrition and energy to pop that seed open and to sprout it and to have it grow until it has about 2 true leaves. So at this point, your growing medium could even be inert. You could start it with peat moss or even like vermiculite. The important thing is the structure, because the seeds need an adequate level of moisture, and they actually need air in order to sprout and grow healthy, and the right temperatures too, because with the right level of moisture, the right level of air, and the right temperature, the seeds essentially, as Bill Mollison likes to call it, they explode into growth. So that's what we're trying to get, these seeds to pop and explode into growth. So to start that, and a medium with a good structure is a good place. Next, what we would be doing is wetting the soil down to make sure it's got a good level of moisture, but this is already relatively wet. So when it comes to moisture content with your soil, what you want to make sure is that it's evenly moist throughout it, but you do not want it to be swampy and over waterlogged. Because like I mentioned before, the seeds not only need water, but they also need oxygen. So if it's over waterlogged and super swampy, then you're going to lack that oxygen. It's just going to create the environment for fungal diseases with the lack of oxygen. That's not what we want. So instead, we want to make sure the soil is again moist but not waterlogged. A good way to test this is what they call the squeeze test. So you take a lump of soil like this, just squeeze it. Don't go crazy squeezing it super hard, but give it a nice squeeze. And if no water comes out, that's a good sign. And if it also holds its shape, that's a good sign. But it should easily break apart just like that. That's exactly what we want. So let's start getting this soil into these trays. And we're just going to use these simple plastic trays with the 6 cells in each little tray. And then we'll just get the soil in here, start filling it up. So let's get this soil and we'll start dropping it in. And this is where not having the big sticks is such an advantage. If you've done this before with the big sticks, they really get annoying trying to push it into these little cells like this. If you're planting into bigger cells with some bigger plant stuff, then it's not as big of a deal, but it could get annoying. And you really want to make sure you wet the soil down like this before you put them in the trays. A good level of moisture will go a long way, but again, not over watering. So I'm going to get this filled up, and then we'll start getting it prepped for seeds. And what we don't want to we want to make sure we're not compacting the soil down like this, because if we're compacting the soil like this, what this is going to create is just lack of oxygen again. That's not what we want. We can just gently push it in, very gently, just to hold its shape. But we're not gonna really compact it in. We don't want it floating like this too light, but we want to just, you know, gently push it in like that. So that's perfect. So we're gonna go around and do that for the tray. Then we're gonna start getting the seeds in. There we go, all prepped, ready to plant. Now we'll just start making our little holes and start getting some seeds in. Now, when it comes to seeds, we want to make sure we're getting good seeds from a good reputable company, and we want to make sure we're focused on variety too. So a good reputable company is going to make sure that you get a good germination rate, and we're not just wasting our time putting the seeds into the ground with a poor germination rate. Also, we want to make sure if we're growing things like cabbage, that we're growing multiple varieties. For example, if we grow a cabbage and we want to grow like the Calabas cabbage in the spring, that takes 105 days from seed to maturity, so that's takes a long time. If we're going to grow that, we want to make sure we're also growing some quick crop varieties of cabbage, something like the Red Express cabbage. That only takes about 65 days from seed to maturity. So we want to make sure we're doing some quick cropping ones mixed in with the long ones, just because if the summer comes early and we have some issues with bugs or anything, we want to make sure we get some of those quick crop ones definitely. Also, when it comes to tomatoes, we want to make sure we're growing some that are hybrid, because in my opinion, the hybrid ones always do well later in the season when some of the late blight and stuff comes in. So it's good to add different varieties of different plants. Focus not only just on the ones that maybe are your favorite ones, but also ones that will crop quickly and also be disease resistant. So picking the right seed, the right varieties will make a huge difference when it comes to your overall harvests. So we have all this ready, we have our seeds chosen. Let's start getting them into the growing medium. And when it comes to planting seed, the size of the seed is going to dictate how deep you plant it into the ground. For instance, something like a brassica, which I'll show you, the seed are tiny. They're going to go in the ground just very slightly, where something like a pea would go in very deeply. So let me open these brassicas up, show you the seed, and start getting some of them into here. So let's get some of these brassica seeds. And I just want to show you the depth of how deep I'll plant them. I use just the back of this. I just make a little depression, not deep. And I usually throw about 2 seeds in and then thin around it. So I'll throw them in at that depth, make sure they're covered just like that. And that's it. Simple as that for doing the brassicas. Now I'm going to show you how I do some of my tomatoes right here. So I'm not planting brassicas today because I've already transplanted my brassicas into the ground. Today I'm planting my tomatoes. And I'll explain again more about the timing of why I seem to be planting them later than I used to. So tomato seeds are a little bit bigger, but they're not going to go much deeper. So we'll say about that depth right there. Take the tomato, we'll just drop it right in, and then just lightly cover it like that. So when it comes to starting your own seed, I mentioned earlier in the video that what you really need is you need the right moisture content, you need air, and you need that third thing, you need the temperature to be correct in order to unlock that seed and make it explode essentially. So when it comes down to things like different kinds of plants like peppers and tomatoes and brassicas, the different kinds of seeds have different temperature requirements in order to pop. So for instance, the peppers are going to need at least 55 degrees in order to pop. If the soil temperature is lower than that, they're not even going to open up. And then if the temperature is about 75 or higher, then it's going to increase the speed of the germination, and those peppers will only take about 7 days to pop up. If the temperature is lower in like the 60s, it might take like 2 weeks. So with lower temperatures like that and the seeds sitting in the trays for long periods of time, that opens up more opportunity for fungal disease and for the seeds to rot. So knowing the requirements for each kind of plant when it comes to germination and stuff is important, because it's definitely going to make it so you're more successful and avoid any kinds of diseases and stuff. So when it comes to things like tomatoes and peppers, I get those up in about 7 days because I set it up just like this. My setup, I've got my tomatoes and my peppers planted, and then what I do is I take a heat mat, one like this, you know, a cheap little heat mat, and then I just lay this on top like this, and then I set it in my house where the temperature is about 70 degrees, and then I'll take a little plastic cover like this. So we're creating a very humid environment with a high level of heat that's coming from down here, because the heat's going to radiate up. And then every day or so I'll come through and I'll just take this plastic cap off, because I want to make sure we're getting a good amount of airflow. When I take that cap off, I can monitor the moisture content within this A good way to do that is by the weight. So I'll check this is pretty heavy right now. If I see that it's getting lighter, I'll water this. What's important though, and the reason this design works well, is because you don't want to water your seedlings like this over the top, especially when they haven't popped yet, because that can wash away the seed, especially if it's smaller seed, things like lettuce and stuff. So what you want to do is actually water from the bottom. So I'll take one of these trays out, and then I'll just take my my watering can or whatever, water at the bottom, and then let that water wick up into the plants. And if there's some that needs to be, you know, if there's excess water, I can just dump it right out. So what that's going to do is allow the plants to kind of naturally wick that water up, and the roots can go searching for the water, as opposed to just watering the top layer. That's what's going to open up the opportunity for fungal diseases like dampening off and stuff. Those are going to kill your young seedlings. So proper watering is really important in this aspect too. After you finish planting and a few days have gone by and your seeds start sprouting, next what you want to do is take your trays when the things first start popping up and get them to a section where they're going to get intense light, and also drop the temperatures down a little bit. That's what I like to do. Right here, I want to give you an example of what can happen. For instance, right here, these brassicas, when they first sprouted, they sprouted earlier than the others. I didn't notice it. I didn't get intense light on them, and I didn't get them into an area where the temperatures were relatively low. As a result of that, not having light, they started to go searching for the light. That's why they got tall and spindly like that. Also, the temperature was too high, so they grew a little too quick, causing them to get spindly and weak, just like that. Now let me show you a tray where I got them in intense light and lowered the temperatures right after they popped up. You can see these brassicas. This is how we want them to look. We want them to be short and stocky and strong. After they start developing a couple true leaves, then we can raise the temperature a little bit, because they'll start to grow as opposed to just search for the light and then start growing. So once we get them to this size, we can get them in a little more higher temperatures and really get to that growth stage. The same thing goes for tomatoes. Like I said, the tomatoes, a good sprouting temperature is about 70-75 degrees, but once they come out of the ground, I like to bring that temperature down to about 55 degrees or so, and then give them an intense amount of light to keep them short, stocky, and strong. I want to take you over to a section now where I planted some brassicas out a couple weeks ago. Before I do that though, I want to talk about these brassicas again. When it comes to brassicas or any kind of seed that I've started, after they pop up, if it's nice enough outside, I love taking them outside and leaving them out there as long as I can, as long as it's weather permitting, because they're going to be outside. So if they can get used to that temperature sooner, then that's a lot better. And when it comes to tomatoes or any of that other stuff, make sure you're always hardening your stuff off before you plant it in the ground. Do not waste all that time you put into growing those tomatoes and then don't harden your plants off, stick them in the ground and they could die. So please make sure you're hardening your stuff off before you put it in. It'll really save you. So right here, we've got some brassicas and some lettuces that I put in this nice this is the Birdie steel raised bed. So we've got nice lettuces that I put in a couple weeks ago, a few different varieties, and also some brassicas. So these brassicas are looking excellent. They're much larger than the ones that I left in trays, because I don't have enough space, because I've already got a lot of my brassicas in the ground. So this is what we want to do. We want them growing really well and continually growing. So I like transplanting everything when it's got the first 2 true leaves, if I can, because I like the plants to go from a growing stage into the ground and then continuing that growing stage. I don't like starting plants, going through the growing stage and then having them sit in the pots a long time, become root bound, slow down, and then plugging them in, because it's like they need to get back into the growing stage again. So I like to continually have things growing and just in that accelerated stage. It looks like Tuck found some kale. So I still have so much of this Russian kale growing through the winter. A bunch of other winter stuff too, but this Russian kale just grows incredibly. And Tuck loves to eat the stems of it, especially now when they're sweet, because it's pretty chilly. So he just likes snacking on the stems, getting that good nutrition. And the kale like this is great for salads and great for smoothies and stuff. So we love growing this Russian kale. Thing's unstoppable. And Tuck's got to have his fresh snacks. Hit that like button and the subscribe button if you love seeing Tuck in the videos, because this guy, not only is the head of security, but he's really the brains behind the whole operation. So little would happen and even less would grow without this guy at the helm. Over the years, one thing that has changed considerably is my planting timing. So it's April 17th today, and my tomatoes, they're just starting to pop out of the ground. Years ago, I remember I would start to plant my tomatoes in like late February. I would take like, some of February, March, April, and then I wouldn't even plant out till mid-May. So I take about 3 months of just taking care of those tomatoes, starting them in one tray, and then transplanting them to another one, and then making sure the temperatures are all right, and just babying along these plants for such a long period of time. And I found that, a considerable amount of effort for little payout. So in my opinion, plants seem to grow well at the proper timing. And it doesn't just mean, in my opinion, that bigger plants and bigger transplant plants ultimately lead to bigger harvests later and earlier harvests. I haven't found that really to be true at all. So I have tried tomatoes like that were big that I grew years ago, and I stuck those into the ground, mid-May or something, and then there would be a seedling or a tomato that sprouted on its own right next to it. And it seemed like a couple weeks later that little seedling would catch up to my big transplant. So it's almost like the plants just need the proper timing in order to start accelerating in growth. Because I would transplant out tomatoes, I try to get them in the ground super early, and then the weather would just not be permitting, and they would just sit in the ground and do nothing and just basically get more unhealthy than when I put them in. So they didn't start just blowing up and excelling until the proper temperatures and the proper weather set in. I have found that to be like late May. So now I don't plant like any of my tomatoes till about May 15th or something like that. And I don't plant them into the ground till about May 15th. Because of that, I don't start planting tomatoes in trays till the first couple weeks of April. I only leave about a month. The seeds take about 7 days to get up, and then 3 to 4 weeks after that time is when they're ready to go into the ground for me. That just seems to work so much better. It's less work, it's convenient, and ultimately I'm getting better growth because there's less opportunity of those tomatoes developing diseases while they're just sitting in the trays for considerable amounts of time. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you feel a little more educated and empowered to start some of your own seeds from home. There's nothing like it. It's simple, it's practical, it's a lot of fun, and you have to make sure you're taking advantage of those endless numbers of varieties that you can grow when you start your own seeds. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share with your friends. Don't forget to check out the merch down low. And remember, whenever you're on Amazon, start your shopping with our Amazon affiliate link. And if you guys want to check out those Birdie's raised beds, I've got a link down in the description too. You can check them out. James and Tuck will be back again real soon. We